Good evening. I'm Andy Biggs. I'm the Congressman from Arizona's 5th Congressional District, and I'm grateful that you would join me for another in our Teletown Hall series. If you want to get in the queue to ask questions, please press *3. *3 to ask questions. I'm delighted you join me. I realize that this is one of the most unique times in the history of our country, and there's so many challenges going on. And amidst those challenges, I hope you are doing well, and I hope that we can have a great dialogue and conversation this evening. Just a couple of things I'd like to draw your attention to. If you want to get on the question line, please press *3. That would be fantastic. We are looking for stories from my constituents, and this is going on all over the country. And we want to know how you've been affected. If you own a business or a small business and you've had difficulties and problems, we want to know about that. If you have lost your job or been furloughed, we would like to know about that. If you've encountered health difficulties or problems as we've gone through this, we would like to know about that. So we have a special mail address for you. It's AZ05 Stories, STORIES, AZ05 Stories at mail.house.gov. Again, if you've had stories of how this virus or how sheltering in place or how any of this has kind of impacted your life, we would like to receive your story at AZ05 Stories, STORIES at mail.house.gov. Appreciate that very much if you join us in that. You can follow me on Facebook at Rep. Andy Biggs, or on Twitter at Rep. Andy Biggs AZ, or on Instagram at Rep. Andy Biggs, or you can go to my website, which is biggs.house.gov. So much of what we spend our time talking about the last couple of months has been dealing with the virus and how that's impacting us. And so if you want to follow me on those social media sites, I hope that will give you the information that you need to do that. I want to just talk also about a couple other things that are going on that I think are really important besides the coronavirus, and that is what has been emerging in the last couple of weeks. First of all, within the last few weeks, the Inspector General Horowitz revealed that in his sample of FISA cases presented by the FBI to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act created courts, he took a sample of 42, and in each one of those cases he found significant deficiencies and sometimes deliberate misleading of the FISA judge in order to get warrants to spy on Americans. This is unacceptable. I've spoken to the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, and we have I have approached through him with many of my colleagues on our side of the aisle, asking the chairman to be willing to open up hearings on this, and we've heard nothing back yet. I'm hoping that we will have some kind of hearing to get to the bottom of this and have Inspector General Horowitz explain to us and to the world what happened and what's going on. I think we should also bring in FBI Director Christopher Wray because he has actually kind of hindered Congress from receiving information on this very serious breach. Additionally, you might have seen in the last couple days with regard to General Michael Flynn, who was ultimately had to resign and was prosecuted by the Department of Justice based on FBI findings. There's now evidence that's been revealed that the FBI had made a conscious decision to try to entrap Mr. Flynn and prosecute him in order to stymie the Trump administration. These things are very serious. It's one of the reasons I believe Congress should be in session, because we have serious things going on. that are in this nation, in addition to the virus. So we need to be addressing those. And so what we've done out of my office, I've introduced 3 bills in the last few weeks. So you know that we're working, even though we're spread around the country. And I'm coming to you from my district in Arizona tonight. And my staff is all over the country, basically telecommuting. But we've introduced 3 pieces of legislation. One is the Veterans Caregiver Act, and that's a bipartisan bill where we are trying to get caregivers who provide assistance to veterans recognized by the Veterans Administration, so they can receive all of the medical information and be a real assistant to that veteran, which right now in so many cases it's difficult for them to receive all the information that they need to help the veteran make decisions. So that's one bill. We've done an additional bill introduced just a couple of days ago, saying that Congress will introduce only bills, single subject, so we don't have these massive bills that become Christmas trees where they're buying votes by giving things to different people. So that's another bill that we've introduced that I think is going to have a significant play and help with that. So I'll keep you posted on additional pieces of legislation that we've done. And now we're going to go to questions. And if you want to get in the queue to ask questions, it's *3. And we're going to go now to Jonathan in Gilbert. Hi, Jonathan. Are you there?
How's it going? Thanks so much for taking my question, Congressman.
My pleasure. Thanks for calling.
I've been looking at the economy recently and how overvalued the stock market is, especially with respect to how much it's being propped up by, looks like, taxpayer money from the stimulus bills that have been passed, trillions of dollars. And I was wondering, what exactly are the plans in Washington to pay for the stimulus bills that have been passed?
Hey, Jonathan, thank you. That's a great question. It's one that I ask my colleagues all the time. How are we going to pay for this? And I will give context, but I'm going to give you also a very short, transparent answer to this. I've asked my colleagues how they're going to pay for it, and they don't really know. They don't really know at this point. And so before we had the coronavirus hit and our economy ran into a brick wall, we had a $1 trillion structural deficit, even though we had a record tax revenue and our economy was robust. In the last several weeks, Congress has passed 4 bills to provide relief. The total cost on that is north of $3 trillion. And I say north of that because the Phase 2 bill, they still don't know what the actual ceiling of the cost of that bill will be. So if you add $3 trillion to the $1 trillion we already had, if we don't spend another dime this year, then we will add $4 trillion to the national debt because our structural deficit will be $4 trillion. It is anticipated that we're going to be looking at, quite frankly, several $trillion more before the end of September. And that will mean you have potential of running $8 to $10 trillion in structural deficit for this year. That's absolutely hard to fathom how you can pay for it. So my suggestion is always maybe we should see if we can find other ways to provide relief to America. But it's a fight. And when I tell you that people aren't really thinking about it right now, that's what I mean. And it is some of us who are raising that question are told that the situation in the country is too dire to think about how we're going to pay for these things. I've asked for offsets. What that means is if you're going to spend money, you need to offset where you're getting it from somewhere else in the budget. And that's been rebuffed, as you astutely pointed out, Jonathan. So thanks very much for that call. And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I will be blunt and straightforward. Thanks for calling in, Jonathan. Now we're going to go to Rick in Mesa. Rick?
Yes, thanks for taking my call, or my question. I had heard a statistic this evening on television that of the 70,000 people or so that have died from the coronavirus, that for those under the age of 25, it's approximately 100 people. And then if you move up to the next category of people 45 and under, it's around 1,000 people. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 68, 69,000 people, the ones that have been affected the most by this are the ones that are older, over the age of 45. It seems to me like shutting down the economy, especially for those that would be 45 and under, has been a misplay by somebody. Just wondered how we can get some of that type of information into Washington so that they can spread that information, and maybe they're aware of it. I don't know, but they're closing down. It sounds to me like a whole bunch of the economy that does not need to be closed down.
Well, Rick, thanks for the question. Let me address this. I would approach it from two or three different angles. Your numbers are largely correct, and I want to extrapolate some other numbers that I think might add some context to it. First of all, the U.S. has done more tests by far than any other nation in the world. By far, we lead the world in testing, and of the COVID-related fatalities, everyone, I just tell you, everyone is a tragedy. I empathize and sympathize with those who have been who have succumbed to this disease. This infection. It's just that's a terrible thing. But I want to give you a perspective. You really need to look at the fatalities per million to really get the perspective. And I'm going to give you 10 nations to help you understand. Belgium, 642 roughly fatalities per million. Spain, a little over 500 per million. Italy, about 450 per million. The UK, 390, almost 400 per million. France, 350 per million, a little over 350. The Netherlands, 265 per million population. Ireland, about 240 per million. Sweden, about 230 per million. Switzerland, about 200 per million. And the United States, about 185 per million. That is important to realize because it gives you context of where we sit. At the same time that this has gone on, we have a bunch of other public health issues that have started to creep in, whether it be increases in suicide, domestic violence, and by the way, in our own district, there's been a severe increase in domestic violence. I just talked with first responders from our district this week. Child abuse, increased use of drugs and alcohol. Those are going on. There's also been suppression of treatment of everything from cancer screening, abdominal injuries, which would normally go in for surgery. So you have the public health. So we're not just talking trading lives for economy. We're talking trading lives for lives. And this is really important to understand. It's because it's very serious. And I would invite any of you who are listening, if you want to get some idea of what's going on, just earlier this evening, I did a live stream with a couple of physicians, and we'll be doing this from now on as often as we can, who will present science and data to help us understand where we are and where we can go in opening our economy. Now, the economy we're now over 30 million unemployed. That's probably not the full picture because most states don't have the bandwidth to process all of the new claims. Our economy contracted in the first quarter by almost 5%, and this is a terrible thing that's going on. I believe if we want to get our economy going again and get our health, our public health going in the right direction, we need to open up the economy and be wise. I think we should continue to provide special attention and care for the particularly vulnerable. That's people, the elderly people and people with serious illnesses, and make sure that we get them tested more often and make sure that we can quarantine them. But I think the rest of us should be able to get out and start opening the economy again. That's my belief. It's based on the data and my many discussions with medical professionals. So thanks for the call, Rick. Now, next we're going to go to Linda in Mesa. Hi, Linda.
Hi there. Good evening. Thank you for taking the call. I am so glad to hear that you have a relationship with physicians. I have been seeing numerous YouTube videos by Dr. Rashid Buttar. I wonder if any of your staff is familiar with who he is, former military physician surgeon, and also the video from the California doctors who were in charge of emergency room. Their video has been taken down, but they were basically saying, the hospitals are kind of sort of empty. And he was going over the death rates and saying, basically, here are the numbers. And this whole situation has been so overplayed for what it is in terms of the real numbers. And I'm concerned very seriously that we've been all hoodwinked. We've been all hoodwinked with bad data that has manipulated decisions to modify our economy, hurt other people, intimidate people, and alienate us from each other. I just see that there's a lot of inhumanity going on in the name of being safe. And I would just ask if you could have your staff try to find the YouTube videos, askdrbuttar.com/ask. And also Judith Mikovits, who has an extensive career in virology and knows Dr. Fauci very well. There are hideous things that have been happening, and I would just hope that there's some way this could be looked into. I really feel President Trump has basically been manipulated so that this whole situation makes it harder for him to win in the fall. And this is not to say that this is not a real virus, but it's certainly, the projections are 90% out of whack. 2.2 million is nowhere near 65,000. And I just think we've all been hoodwinked with these numbers, and I think there might be an agenda, and I think our leaders have to look into it, because I'm hearing now that there are camps in Washington State where people will be asked to go if they are positive for the virus, and I'm thinking that sounds like Nazi Germany to me. So anyway, yeah. I would ask if your staff...
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Linda, and I will tell you that one of the doctors that you mentioned, Dr. Dan Erickson, out of California, was on the live stream that we did just a couple of hours ago, and I have talked, and I do talk to medical professionals around the country who have actually talked about where the science and the data takes us and how we can get these things going. And so I appreciate that call, and I would just ask everyone who's listening, if you get a chance, go to my Facebook at Rep. Andy Biggs, and that video will be up, and we want you to be able to see that and hear that discussion. We'll continue to have discussions with medical professionals as we go along that we will put out for your consumption, because I think it's absolutely important that we get the updated science and the updated data as we go, because we learn more and more as we're going along here. And with that, we're going to go. I will just say, if you want to get in the queue, it's *3. And now we're going to Joyce in Mesa. Joyce?
Hello, and thank you so much for making these teleconferences possible for all of us. We realize you're trying to bring bills forth, Mr. Biggs. We get that, but if you're not back there in Congress, nothing is going to get done. And it's so frustrating. We're avid Republicans, but Pelosi is running the show all the time. Sick of it. We need to all get back there. Some of the senators are back, but their House representatives aren't coming back. Why? Who's running the boat there? We do need your help because we're helpless without you.
Hey, let me tell you, Joyce, I agree with you. We should be back there. I spent actually most of last week back in D.C., and I am frustrated like you because there is so much going on. Everything, whether it's the findings with regard to FBI Under Director James Comey, the FISA abuse that went on, the politically motivated prosecution and entrapment of Michael Flynn. There is so much to do, and so here's the way it works. Even though I'm here, I'm in constant contact with my staff throughout the day. I'm making calls throughout our district every day. I'm talking to my colleagues around the country. I'm talking to the administration. I'm doing virtual meetings with groups. As busy as I am, and as important as those things are, if we're to be leaders, we need to be in Washington, D.C. And we're in the minority in the House of Representatives, so we don't control that. And you'll see members of the Freedom Caucus going almost every, what we call a pro forma. 2 times a week they have to open up the House of Representatives. They will not call on us because when I've been there trying to press forward, my query of them is when are we going to get back to work? When will you bring us back? And they won't even call upon us. And to give you an idea, the last bill that passed out of there last, I believe it was Friday, $484 billion worth of spending. And from the Freedom Caucus alone, we had created 7 amendments. We knew they weren't going to let us even have a vote on those amendments, but we wanted to at least present them to the Rules Committee, and they refused to allow us to present those to the Rules Committee. So Nancy Pelosi is running the place. The House of Representatives, Mitch McConnell runs the Senate, and we're pushing hard. I actually believe that you're going to see, hopefully, one of my colleagues is going to try to make a motion tomorrow if they will recognize him, and that will be an effort from a Freedom Caucus member, and we're trying to rotating through from Freedom Caucus members to go in. But I can tell you, the fact that we could go back there and socially distance ourselves, and nobody got sick, including staff, tells me and should tell all of America that Congress should be there doing its job. Joyce, you're exactly right. I appreciate you calling me out and more importantly, calling Nancy Pelosi out. Thanks. Now we're going to go to Carol. Hi, Carol.
Hi. Hello?
Hey, yeah, Carol, you're on.
Oh, great. I'm out here in Gilbert. My basic question is this, and I have some, there's a couple things that have come up since listening to your little radio thing, your, I guess, phone thing. I appreciate it because I think it's important that you hear from everybody. I am a registered independent. I was born and raised here in Arizona, so I'm not a real gullible person. If anything, I don't really give a high hoot over what party you are as long as you make it work. And that's the definitive thing, is make it work. So my question is this, and I have some real dilemma over it because I'm also a very moral person. And I'm kind of pretty black and white. I guess that's a conservative viewpoint, but I think it's more of an Arizona viewpoint, more than liberal or conservative, just Arizona. The meat packing plants. Obviously, I love meat. I'm an Arizonan. I like my beef. I've always loved my beef. But I'm concerned that we're going to be putting people in positions of danger if we're not really testing them. Primarily because we've got people out there that just taking a temperature doesn't weed out the carriers. And they haven't known all that much about this virus, but they sure the heck now know that part of the reason this thing is spreading like it is because people are walking around with no intention of infecting anybody, but are infectious carriers. If you're not going to be testing people, but you're going to be expecting somebody to be working next to them, how the heck are we going to know? And as far as I'm concerned, I'll eat grass if I know that I'm going to jeopardize somebody in a meat packing plant just because I got to have my beef. You get me?
I think I do. I think I understand where you're going from, and I think I understand what you're asking. So I'm going to just, oddly enough, earlier today we had a briefing on meat processing facilities. We've also had, you saw probably last weekend, the head of Tyson Foods, which is the biggest meat processor in the country. They process beef, poultry, pork, talk about threats to the supply chain because of not enough workers. Additionally, you also have some specific items of the supply chain. I could go into some details because the hog production supply chain is different than the beef supply chain, but the poultry and the hog look fairly similar in the sense that they do just in time, and beef is a little bit different than that. And so what they do is, as you are processing your chickens and your pork, you are actually moving it very quickly, and so that every day you have a certain steady stream of the production, and then it gets out and distributed in the normal fashion. Well, what's happening is with restaurants being shut down, that has had an impact on the supply chain. The demand has changed and may be down a bit. Additionally, what you have is workers who are concerned because they don't want to catch the COVID-19, which I don't blame them. I understand. They're concerned. So there's a couple of aspects to this. Number one, they're euthanizing many tens of thousands of hogs rather than processing them and give them to market. And that will continue. In fact, that will probably continue for the short term, which is a tragedy because it means that the food supply chain is going to possibly cause some concerns for consumers down the pike. Many in the meat processing industry, they want to make sure that they have testing. They want to make sure they have PPE and I can't remember what they have two other things, but they've been receiving PPE and they need to get more frequent testing. I get that. That's where I think that they're trying to satisfy the unions that are representing the meat processors. So that's kind of a very thin thumbnail sketch of what's going on with the meat packers. But we really need the meat packers. We need all of the food processors, whether you're in Yuma processing winter vegetables, which have now been harvested largely, or planting or wherever. We need to make sure that the food supply chain goes forward, because the reality is you actually would have some severe problems if our food supply chain was significantly interrupted, because it would impact the health of all Americans and make more people vulnerable to everything from COVID-19 to any other communicable disease. And so we've got to make sure that we can get clean, safe food to the consumers of our food in America. So thanks for the call, Carol. We're going to go to James next in Mesa.
Yeah, hello, Andy.
Hi, James. How you doing?
Good. Okay, my question is, here in Arizona, I know that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of hospital beds that are open in our hospitals. And there's people that need surgery. Why can't we block off certain wings in these hospitals to where they don't have to see the COVID patients and other people can have the elective surgeries that they need? The government has stepped in and decided what's elective and what's selective. There's people that are in dire need of surgery right now, and with all these vacant hospital rooms, these surgeries could be taking place, and you can quarantine somebody for 2 weeks, make sure they don't have the virus before you do the surgery on them. I don't understand why they can't just block off certain wings in these hospitals and keep them separate from the COVID patients.
That's a great point, James. Now, let me address it this way, because I don't disagree with you. Around the state, we have hospitals and we have counties where the number of hospitalizations of COVID patients has been incredibly low, very low. But the hospitals the government has stepped in and said you can't do elective surgeries, and so those hospitals have been losing a lot of money. They've been furloughing staff, and it's been a huge, huge problem. And the way you need to understand this, because when this first was announced, I wasn't sure what an elective surgery would mean. I mean, when you hear the term elective surgery, you may think, oh, that's just maybe a little plastic surgery or something like that. That isn't what elective surgery is. There's a legal term, and I've read the definitions, and I'm just going to summarize by saying if you can schedule your surgery and it's not an emergency surgery, then they view that as elective surgery. Well, a brain tumor surgery is then becomes elective. Eye surgery can become elective. Other cancer surgeries can be elective. And so this has become a problem. And we talked some more about this on my live stream earlier tonight with these doctors. This is a potential public health crisis in the making that will compete with the COVID-19 crisis. We've got to deal with that. So I have been advocating for 3 weeks or more now that what should happen in Arizona is that each hospital should be allowed and to determine whether they're going to do elective surgeries. Because the reason that they said no elective surgeries is because they wanted to be prepared for a surge. Well, right now we're probably about 22 to 24% of all ventilators in the state are in use, something like that. We have about 68 to 70% of our ICU beds are in use. So you can see that you have a pretty good vacancy there. And so if we furlough nurses and staff, we're going to be in a problem should we have a surge. And by failing to allow for, let's get back to the color of the supply chain, people coming in who need this surgery. It's very serious. They go in, they get the surgery, and the hospital's making money for it. You really can't keep supporting all these folks that you need should you have a surge. And so then you got to gear back up again. So I'm with you on that, James. We should be doing that. And I trust the hospital administrators. These people. Many of them have been in that business a long time. They've studied that specialty for a long time, and I trust that they're going to make the right decisions. And we need to also trust them. And I'm hoping that we can get back to that ASAP, like 3 weeks ago. That's when it should have happened. We're going to go to Kristen and Connor.
Connor, come take your question. It's ready now. Hi.
Hi, Kristen. You're going to have Connor ask me a question. Great.
Pardon?
You're going to have Connor ask me a question?
Yes, he's coming down now. He got distracted by his game. Here he comes.
Oh, good. Glad to have him on.
you're asking about when school reopens.
When will school reopen?
When will school reopen? I'm hoping that it reopens sooner rather than later. And I'll tell you, I don't know the date because I think it's going to be, I'm hoping it's going to be on time for the next school year. So like for instance, if you're in Chandler, I think they're a little earlier because they usually do year round, and then you get to Gilbert, Queen Creek, and Mesa, etc. So I hope that we'll open on time because I really think that's helpful to children. We don't want them foregoing their education. It's helpful for families because it provides, I think, quite frankly, stability and predictability and normalcy for the families. And I think that is really important. And the other thing, and some of the experts I've talked to, the medical experts, they think the first place that should open up is K-12 because some of the safest, or COVID has such a small and extremely rare effect on children that it really is where we should start. I don't know what else to tell you except for I think we should be opening up on time. That's a local decision. That won't be a congressional decision. That'll be a local decision. So thanks for asking the question, Connor. All right, we're going to go next to Dan in Gilbert. Hey, Dan.
Hey. I am a physical therapist and have been treating patients through this crisis and applied for the PPP loan to help my workers that have braved this as well. And applied early in the first round. Funds ran out. I thought I heard that the second round was supposed to have focus on smaller businesses less than 10, which is mine, less than 10 people. But yet I hear funds are running dry again, and I still haven't heard.
Yeah.
So my question is, did the second round have specification for smaller businesses?
Dan, thanks for your question. I'm sorry that you haven't had your business application processed and addressed fully yet. And I just want to say that there are many in the Southeast Valley. And we're trying to, when we hear about it, let us know. Or, this is the first I've heard of your specific case, Dan, but what we typically do is when I get a case, I call in through my pipeline, which was given to us by Secretary Mnuchin, to report that we have a problem with it. This business has not received an answer, whatever. We try to process that. So feel free you can call into my office at 480-699-8239. That's 480-699-8239. Now, to answer specifically your question, the whole program was supposed to be for small businesses. And when they saw so much of it sucked up and diverted to larger businesses and controlled by larger banks last time, they said, well, if we get more money to be processed through community banks, then we will see smaller businesses get that. Well, again, about 15,000 of those loans went like immediately, were processed by the bigger banks. In the bill itself, there were 3 categories of banks, and there was funding that was supposed to go to each tier of banks. So if you had under $10 billion of capitalization as a bank or a credit union, or you were given so many tens of billions of dollars that you would process. And then the next step, I believe, was $10 to $50 billion of capitalization, and then you were to get a significant portion specifically allocated. And then the big banks and also those 2 tiers of banks, that they would each have equal access to the rest of the pot of money. I'm not sure that it went that way, and I think there was tremendous difficulties with the implementation and the pipelines, the electronic pipeline again. So I would tell you that there was supposed to be put in place these mechanisms with the idea of focusing on smaller firms. I'm hearing what you just called about. I'm hearing that over and over again every day, and we try to process that and send that on. So if any of you are out there that need some help with that, again, my number is 480-699-8239. We will try to take your information and funnel that back to Secretary Mnuchin's people to see if we can get some responses. And again, those are the stories that I need to hear as well. So we have a place for that on AZ05 stories at mail.house.gov. AZ05 stories at mail.house.gov. And Dan, I am sorry that you've had such a difficult time. And I will tell you, watching what's happened here with the shutdown and the lockdown is really it just is so frustrating, because I think we can, your people are doing a great job with something that's absolutely necessary, and everybody who owns a business believes that their business is necessary. And I would hope that we could open up these businesses to try to mitigate against the difficulties of shutting down our economy. But next, we're going to go to Raymond in Queen Creek. Hi, Raymond.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for calling tonight.
Yeah, I got a question here. I'm a retired law enforcement person, and one of the things that would help with the economy would be to find a way to maybe open up our 401ks and get rid of the taxes and penalties. Particularly, this would help families that are struggling to access some of their money they might put away to use to both keep them on the living side of it and also on the side of the economy. It would go a long way to get our economy moving quickly. And along with that, instead of doing a stimulus bill, why don't we forgive the income tax and maybe do that for a year or two? And that would go a long way in keeping our government from getting in debt. And at the same time, it would free money to people that need it than folks that would otherwise have access to it. These stimulus bills that never make it to the little guy.
Great question, Raymond. I appreciate and I will tell you, on your 401k, there is a significant move within my political party in D.C., and we've advocated that, quite frankly, since the Phase 1 bill. And I'm advocating that again. We're submitting to the White House as a letter today we sent to the administration advocating that, and that was something we were pushing for to amend. We were denied that opportunity to amend by the Speaker. I think you're right. I think the retirement accounts, but not just 401ks, but all of the specialized accounts that receive tax deferment and impose a penalty if you take money out early. I think we need to forgive that and let us do that, because it would provide liquidity, and it would do so in a quick fashion, and it would do so to specific individuals as they need it. So I think that's a great idea. On the income tax, I have proposed a number of different income tax, both for individuals and businesses, reductions, so that we could try to provide relief there. I think what would happen is you would provide some form of stimulus by way of not taking as much out of somebody's paycheck. One thing I just did was give a payroll holiday proposal back to the White House, and we'll see if they accept it. It's really tough to get them to accept these things because we're fighting constantly folks who don't believe in that, and they want to actually expand the scope and range of government, and I'm just not that kind of guy. So I'm trying to find other ways that we can actually lift the businessmen and women in our country. And so, Raymond, I'm grateful for that. It's great, two great questions. We're going to go next to Nancy in Mesa.
Hi, Governor. Hi, Governor Biggs. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just a congressman, Nancy.
You're not the president yet?
No, ma'am. Don't want to be.
Well, that's a huge responsibility, isn't it?
It is.
I just wanted to ask you, I'm 81 years old, and I live in a retirement community, and they've closed our pools, and they've closed all of our activities, and I'm 81, and my children are suffering. My grandchildren are suffering. They're all off from their jobs. My one daughter has a business, and I have close friends that have small businesses. They're hurting real bad, and I feel guilty. I go, don't close down the government because of me or anyone that's my age. It's ridiculous. We need our economy. We need our children to be blessed. They can't be blessed sitting home. This is not good. We need to open up Arizona now. I've sent messages to our governor, Governor Ducey, and asked him to open up, and he extended it to the 15th. What on earth is he thinking?
Well, Nancy, thanks for calling it. It is somewhat inexplicable to me, and so I would just tell you that I agree with everything you say. I think if we, as free people in the United States of America, I trust the people in this country an awful lot, and I believe that we sincerely can open up our society, not just our economy, but our society, and we can do it in a way where we're respectful of the hazards, the health hazards that are out there. I just know the American people can do that. I believe in them. And if we do that, then we have a chance to restore societal normalcy as well as economic, the foundations of economic prosperity. Right now, what we've done is we've emasculated our economy. And the question will be, is there a foundation that's solid enough to quickly rebound if we open up the economy? And I believe that we can rebound. I think it will take a while because some of the things I've already talked about tonight, like supply chains that have to be rebuilt and reconstructed. And right now, we have people that are making more money being unemployed than they were when they were making $14 an hour. So that becomes a disincentive as well. But we can't continue to fool ourselves into thinking that shutting down the economy and putting people into the emotional, economic, and physical stress of losing their jobs or losing their retirement savings because the market has collapsed or contracted, or people who've taken a second mortgage on their home to start their small business, and then they're told that you can't pursue your small business. We can't believe that the public health of those people is not going to suffer. We know that when there's poverty, it exacerbates physical health issues. And so, Nancy, I couldn't agree with you more. I appreciate the call tonight, and I'll continue to sound my call that we need to open up. So next we're going to go to Heather in Mesa. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Congressman. This is similar to the lady before, Nancy, but I am a healthcare worker that I have had my hours cut because our hospital is empty. I have seen all kinds of Nazi rules imposed on me and imposed on our community. So I'm really frustrated because I've seen bad flu seasons, and I've been a healthcare worker for over 20 years. I've been in the hospital for a really long time, and they reacted to this so severely and so outrageously. I at first was on board with, yes, let's do the social distancing, but then all of a sudden the stay-at-home orders. Then all of a sudden they're taking more liberties with our freedoms. They're cutting us back. And now the governor extending the 2 weeks more when we should be opening up Arizona. I want to know, is there a financial incentive that he has? Because I heard it alluded that he was on a board for the vaccine production and also for testing. And I know he was promoting that we're not really going to open until we have vaccinations, or we need more testing. So I'm wondering if there's a financial incentive as to why he's keeping our state closed.
Heather, thank you for calling in. I'm sorry you've been had your hours reduced or been furloughed. That is, I hear from medical care workers regularly who express some of the same frustrations that you just expressed. I don't know what Governor Ducey's. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know his motivations. I find it would be difficult for me to believe that he had a financial incentive in emasculating the state economy. I just don't know that I can accept that. But what I can tell you is, I'm a big believer that we should be opening up and getting back to work. I've believed that for a month because what we're seeing is just absolutely devastating to the American people, not just our economy, but our public health, our morale, our psyche, the essence of who we are. You mentioned the abrogation of constitutional rights. Yeah, we're seeing that on a regular basis. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Costco, you can go to a big box store of some kind, but they don't want you to go to church. You can go to a grocery store, but you cannot go to you can't dine on a patio somewhere. These types of things are draconian, and they're antithetical to who we are as an American people. Again, I trust the American people. We will be responsible. We know how to exercise freedom. We are free. It's our choice. If you don't want to go out, it would be your choice to stay in. If you didn't want to open up a business, it would be your choice not to open that business. Similarly, I don't think it's the place of government to say whose job is essential and whose business is essential. That is what we believe is freedom. The market tells us what's essential. If you have a business and it's truly essential to the community, and people want that business is going to stay in. If it's not, if people don't want it, don't believe that it's necessary in the community, they're going to leave that. That's what the deal is. And this notion of basically going to bureaucrats who are going to determine what's essential, what's not essential, that's not appropriate, nor is taking away our rights. I'm grateful that Attorney General Barr has issued 2 memos in the last 10 days, one of which deals with religious liberty, the other one deals with other oppressive enforcement by states, governors, councils, and whatnot. And he's right. His statement is real simple. You do not give up your constitutional rights in a state of emergency. The converse is, if the state or the government is trying to take away a right, it has to be narrowly tailored, and you cannot single out any individual or any business. It has to be broadly done, and you basically have to have the least restrictive alternative. We're not seeing that. We're seeing a congeries of conflicted, just absolutely measures that don't make sense. Some of the ones I've mentioned. You can, in some places, they'll let you go to a big box store to get groceries and medicine, but you can't get a computer there. Or in Michigan, you can't buy. You can buy a lawnmower, but you can't buy a rototiller. These are the kind of crazy things that you get going on. I appreciate your call, Heather. I continue to fight and speak out on this, and I will as long as I possibly can. Now we're going to go to Kathy in Mesa. Hi, Kathy.
Hi. I'm happy to be on for this listening time, and I just have a question about legislation that I've heard has been put forth that will protect these businesses as they open up from being sued for this COVID. And I think that's very important. And I'm out here in a active seniors community, and we can't swim and we can't go to our gym. And when I ask them now why, of course, they're going along with the state, but they definitely are afraid because she brought up their attorneys said that they could not reopen yet. So I'm just wondering how that legislation is going or what you can tell us about that, because that is going to be major for these businesses to get back on their feet.
Kathy, excellent point. I anticipated that some time ago, and I introduced legislation at the federal level 2-3 weeks ago dealing with liability. It would have been done sooner, but I was trying to circulate it to my colleagues to get feedback. So I introduced that piece of legislation, and there is a keen cognizance of that in Congress, and we're working on that. But the problem is we will be dealing with federal lawsuits, federal cases. The state needs to, in my opinion, pass legislation immediately, which protects the liability of folks. Otherwise, you will see this expand not just for COVID-19. You'll see it for the common cold, for influenza. You'll see it for virtually any communicable disease. They'll say, well, I went to the XYZ shop and I was fine and healthy when I went in. I came out and I had the flu, and so I'm going to sue that shop. We've got to clarify this liability and stop this before it becomes an industry for trial lawyers. Thank you very much, Kathy, for the question. Now we're going to go to Connie in Chandler.
Hi, Representative Biggs. Thanks for taking my call. I
bet.
have so many things that I could say or ask on all of this, but the first thing I wanted to ask was, what do you think we should do on the China not keeping this coronavirus in their country and letting it go worldwide? And secondly, my husband come up with a thing, and I truly believe he's right, that he said he thinks they were making a vaccine, and that's how this got out, because they were planning on making a biological weapon. So they were making a vaccine to protect themselves if they ever did make a biological weapon, which is really scary to think that could be what had happened. And then secondly, the other thing I'd like to say is I think we could have really prevented a mess by if they'd have taken and given every American citizen, say, $250,000, a one-shot deal, and not let everybody file for unemployment. And we have, 350 million people here?
About 330 million.
Okay, so we have 330 million Americans. Anybody that's already a millionaire, you wouldn't give it to them, over $500,000. Give them a one-shot deal. Don't let them file unemployment. And then any small businesses, let them file for a loan. And then just help, say, the hospitals or whatever. Don't help any of the big businesses. I think we could have got away with this with $1 trillion instead of $4 trillion. It could have been, give them a one-shot deal and made it so simple. And we could have probably saved money instead of the mess we're in. And then,
Connie, you may be right. I haven't done the math. I don't know. We can do the math and check it out. Believe it or not, I've got some colleagues who agree with you, I think, and so that's an interesting idea, an interesting thought. Now, but let me talk about China for a second. So I've seen the vaccine story. I haven't been able to determine the credibility of it. So the first thing I think we have to do is our intelligence agencies have got to basically get in and find out what happened in China, because we still are having trouble getting accurate data out of China. But I will tell you what I think it needs to be done. We have got to put the tax and the regulatory incentive in place so that these businesses will want and will need to bring the businesses home out of China, and quite frankly from many other nations, so that we can bring the supply chains home, manufacturing jobs, other jobs home to the United States. That would be problematic for China. That would cause them some problems. There are others who want to bring litigation and authorize litigation against China for those who suffered because of the virus. So that's being discussed and looked at. I don't know where I am on that yet. Then today, President Trump indicated that he would revisit tariffs against China. And so what you have is a whole bunch of different ideas where people are trying to figure out how you hold China accountable. And right now, what I can see is that many in the European Union also are looking for mechanisms to bring against China. There are also multilateral institutions that China belongs to that we need to hold them to bear on everything from stealing our intellectual property to what they did with the coronavirus. So a lot to consider there. And now we're going to go to Brad. Brad in Gilbert.
Andy, how you doing tonight?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good. Stay healthy.
Yeah,
I'm vertical and
fine.
taking nourishment. Those are two good signs. I was glad to hear you say earlier that you're trying to keep an eye on the pocketbook, what's going on in Washington. I know that's very, very difficult. Last week you had an article in the Wall Street Journal that was talking about the various states are looking for a handout from the federal government due to the coronavirus. I guess their tax receipts are down and whatever. And you said, well, we may have to do that. And I'm sitting there going, I'm totally against that. I mean, number one, a lot of these governments, California, Illinois, New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, they're spendthrifts. Some of them are run by criminals. The last, 5 out of 7 governors of Illinois have been to prison. But I sit here and go, on the one hand, say we're going to watch the money, and on the other hand, maybe we got to help these guys. I disagree, completely disagree. So those guys, like I said, they're spendthrifts, and their voters might be mad, but hey, they're the ones that elected them. So, we got to, now, and on top of all that, the federal government doesn't have the money. You guys are running out of money anyway. So
yeah. So hey, Brad, I gotta tell you something that this and don't feel bad about this, because this happens a lot with me. The article you saw was written by a fellow who he gets hate mail for me that's meant for me, and I get inquiries which are meant for him. His name is Andrew Biggs, and he's a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, and he did put a piece out in the Wall Street Journal last week on April 25th, where he was talking about giving a bailout for Illinois and other parts of the states. Your points are exactly correct, though. We have got states that have mismanaged their budgets for, in some cases, for literally generations. You've got states that have messed up their pension plans. Illinois, I think the number there is something like $4.5 billion in the hole on their pension plan. You've got New York, which was over $6 billion behind on their state budget before the COVID ever even occurred. You've got Maryland, which basically emasculated its economy by having some of the most draconian lockdown in the country, and the governor there is screaming for a bailout. I think, Brad, your point's well taken, and right now I'm trying to find a way to convey my concern and your concern to Nancy Pelosi, who's already said that she's all for $800 billion roughly in bailout for states, including her own state of California, which has also been draconian, and basically it's really kind of odd if you they're going to let people out of jail and prison in California, but if you take your family down to the beach and nobody else is there, they're going to arrest you. So they're letting out one class of prisoners to create criminals of average Americans. Just outrageous. So I will close out tonight. Thanks for all of you who called in and participated. We're out of time, but if you have a story, please go to az05stories@mail.house.gov. If you had a question with PPP or something else, my staff is working. We're doing a lot of casework, and a lot of it's coming in with regard to these things. 480-699-8239. Please take a look at the live stream we did tonight with the doctors at my Facebook site, Rep. Andy Biggs. Follow me on Twitter at Rep. Andy Biggs AZ, or on Instagram at Rep. Andy Biggs. You can get all that information and more at biggs.house.gov. We've got information on the constitutional rights that are being abrogated. We put up a new list every day. We also provide information regarding services dealing with the virus every day. So please keep in touch with us, and I'll try to keep in touch with you. With that, God bless all of you, and I hope to get back with you really soon. Thank you.